Good afternoon and good morning to all of our guests watching Leadership from the Heart. We, Elizabeth Riley, are so incredibly excited, or shall we say, super stoked to have the most special guest today as a repeat guest to talk about some really amazing topics. Elizabeth, how thrilled are you today?
I've been so looking forward to this. Just Glenn has been so instrumental in just our journey and our story. And you're right. He was the first one on our show that wasn't really a show, right? It was just really you and I reaching out to somebody we admire and respect saying, hey, how are we to lead? What are we supposed to do? What are your thoughts? And yeah, we've come, it's a little bit surreal. So Glenn, thank you for coming back and sharing with us.
Oh no! Thanks for having me back. And yeah, this has turned into a really. I mean, I see it every week. I think I'm watching it on, especially on LinkedIn. It shows up really well on LinkedIn and pops up there. And I'm always watching an episode or two every week or two. So.
Well, if we look back, Glenn, again, this was really organically produced. You were our first guest, and in the beginning, for about 2 to 3 months, Elizabeth and I were sustaining the show at a feverish pace, which was 5 days a week. We've now shifted to 1 day a week right. because the world is opening up again. But nonetheless, Glenn Sanford, founder of eXp Realty, CEO of eXp World Holdings, we have a lot to talk about today. So let's dive right in. A lot's changed in the last 6 months. Share with us a bit of the journey.
Yeah, it has. I mean, if you go back, 6 months ago, it's now September. So that would be like February, March time frame 6 months ago. I mean, that was, COVID was hitting. I was actually, Debbie and I were actually in Australia at the time. And we were like, watching the news, wondering, what country is going to get shut down. We actually moved our trip up to come back to the U.S. by 2 days because we're like worried that potentially flights are going to get shut down or whatever. But obviously, fortunately, COVID hasn't been as bad as it could have been. I mean, it's pandemics. You don't know you don't know until you figure it out. It's still not good, obviously. It's certainly changed everything. Obviously going to a physical office for people is a very now perceived risky proposition. And sort of, so the whole idea of, social distancing and wearing a mask everywhere you go when you're in public. I mean, these are just different things that are going on. Cool thing about obviously eXp, and there was some other folks that really sort of branded this, but we were built for what we're going through. It was, we launched after the downturn in 2008, going into 2009. We recognized that the fact is that we finally had technology, our phones now, super high speed internet. In fact, I'm streaming off of an LTE connection for this meeting. And yet I can literally be anywhere. You can be anywhere, and we can actually be, collaborating, working together, that whole thing. And so as a company, we were able to provide, the infrastructure and support for agents to continue to do their business without missing a beat. We downsized because we didn't know how bad it was going to be. But, as a company, we were able to weather the storm, and we actually had our, from a financial perspective, our best quarter in the history of the company in what could be perceived as the worst quarter for residential real estate. For quite some time, we saw Realty was down like 25%, Remax was down, a bunch. Redfin barely grew, and they're a growth company. And then you've got, a number of other players that are out there, most of all of whom shrunk in Q2. And we were able to actually, because of the agents growing eXp and everything that was going on, we were able to support agents and have a great quarter.
You bring up a Sorry. Go ahead. No, go ahead, Elizabeth.
I was going to say, we had an amazing quarter, and all of us that were connecting within our company, I mean, we were continuing to build each other up and supporting each other. And it was business as usual, right, in a very unique situation. And it allowed us to reach out and help those that were struggling. And I didn't realize how the industry was a little bit behind, because what we've been operating virtually for, I mean, you've had the company over 10 years now. I've been here 5.5 years. And it was amazing to kind of see how people were having to try and catch up and figure out how to function in that new normal. And so when our numbers came out, I mean, we were all celebrating and we were all excited, but again, no real surprise because we know how to operate. I was surprised to see other numbers from other companies coming out. I mean, we're publicly traded. We can't hide behind the numbers. We can't hide behind or provide numbers that may be the right numbers or may not be, or maybe shifted a little bit. So even seeing some of the other numbers from companies that were down, I wonder how far down they really were. But we couldn't hide. So it was great to see us to be able to see the success across not only the country, but the other countries we're a part of as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's I think there's now five publicly traded real estate brokerages now. So it is actually fairly easy to sort of see a lot more numbers than you could even 3-4 years ago. I mean, when you go back pre-2013, you had 2 companies at that point that were publicly traded, and that was Remax and Realty, and to a limited extent Berkshire Hathaway. But Berkshire Hathaway, of course, owns like half of the planet in terms of just different companies. So it's hard to actually isolate their real estate brokerage inside of that. But Realty and Remax, and they were hit pretty hard in Q2, and we grew pretty significantly.
What do you feel? I mean, so looking at one of the drivers that's been very interesting is the recent acquisition of Showcase IDX. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about how the acquisition is important for our company, what that means, and any other drivers you feel that contributed to the fact that we reported record-breaking earnings in Q2.
Well, certainly Showcase IDX didn't really contribute at this point, but one was our ability to the single biggest cost to run a real estate brokerage is the bricks and mortar, followed closely by the staffing costs, and so that's the reason why most real estate brokerages that are out there, one, they're franchises, so they're having to pay franchise fees off the top to headquarters, and then in order to pay for the local bricks and mortar component, which is a requirement of the franchise agreements in 99% of cases. Broker owners have to charge at least a 70-30 split with their agents just to be able to support that bricks and mortar infrastructure. And then on top of that, they have to have them pay in that 30% enough again to pay for that bricks and mortar. So you see agents, they're paying 20, 30, 40, in some markets, $50,000 before their split comes down. That's because, in order for that, market center, that real estate office to be profitable, they need that much income just to pay for the bricks and mortar and the staffing costs. So it is it's totally different economics from as a real estate brokerage. And then because all of our costs are variable, we're able to reduce our expenses on a dime, and then reinvest as things come back. And so we've reinvested in staff and a bunch of other things to make sure that we could keep up with the growth in Q3, which has been incredible. But it's been, that's been the real driver, just agent productivity, agent growth. We're up over 50% year over year in terms of agent count. And so that certainly doesn't hurt when it comes to putting up transactions. Of course, all of this is all based on, and of course, this is leadership from the heart. It all comes down to the leaders who literally have led with their hearts in helping agents actually succeed. They've given back to others to help them succeed at a higher level, and that's what's really driven. That's what really drove the numbers, and it's really that that leadership component, people leaning in, caring more about others' well-being, recognizing full well that if you care for other people, eventually it comes back. The giver's gain is just built into the eXp model. It was from day one something that really was part of my DNA for a long time, even pre eXp. I loved models where I could help somebody else succeed and I could get rewarded for those efforts over the long haul. And that sort of really just played into why we had such a great queue. Of course, Showcase IDX was a really great opportunity for us to actually build out something we were doing pre-eXp. I was involved in running 6 of the top real estate portals around the country. And so we had top real estate websites. When we were thinking about what we were going to do during the housing crisis, we were going, well, we could go and lean in on the portals, but that was going to take a lot of money. You look at, how much money Zillow invested to get the market or the footprint that they have, or Redfin, and we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars that they've invested to sort of build out these national footprints and then monetize them and do all the other things that they're doing. And we didn't really want to, go and raise tons of money. Didn't really actually want to be sort of subservient to Wall Street, because that's what it would have meant had we went and raised that money. We wanted to be very agent centric. So we instead, went with a model that was very agent centric. And now we're able to come back around, now that we've got the agent base, now that we've got the profitability, now that we've got, all of that, and we're able to go back in and invest in actually building out a portal. So one for eXp in general. So you can think about just, searching exprealty.com and sort of the upgrades that'll take place in the next 6 months or so to just that portion of the site. But then, could we develop our own portal strategy? And I think that's where it's going to get really exciting, because, wouldn't it be great if, one of the top 2 or 3 portals on Google when you search for real estate is an eXp powered portal. And that's what we're really sort of gearing towards. It's a long game. It's probably, 18 months, 2 years before anybody will get to look at what we're doing in that regard. But once it starts to really roll out, the types of things that we are internally understand, having done this before, is something that, very few companies out there have any understanding of how to do.
Right. And that's an incredible competitive edge for not only our buyers and sellers, but the agents as well, and how they're focusing on the customer acquisition and also the customer service that they provide their customers that they have. So that's an incredible leverage point for all of the eXp Realty agents.
Oh, for sure. And I think that's that's really, there's a whole bunch of components in there. One is a truly consumer first real estate website. And if we can, and we think that there's things that, Zillow hasn't done, Realtor.com hasn't done, Redfin may have done a little bit of, but we think there's some things that we can do that'll really take the consumer experience to a whole different level, where so this is an interesting step. When the average consumer is just looking at homes, just trying to find the price, they're typically using Zillow. That's going to be the site they go to. Maybe they use Realtor.com. It's in their pocket. It's easy to access. But when they're actively looking at property to buy, they're using 9 websites. So that's the average number of websites that they're using to search for homes, because they don't want to miss the right property when they're actually serious about real estate. And they're looking for, where can I get an advantage in understanding the property? Where can I work with an agent that's actually maybe visited that home and actually previewed the home? How do I, so they're looking at different trigger points. And so when we think about it from that perspective, it's no longer about, how do I get an agent to pay me money for a lead, which is those business. We're more about, when I think about a portal, I think about the idea that a consumer goes, I'm so well taken care of in this portal experience, and I'm able to really sort of mesh up with the agent that I choose to work with, that all of a sudden it creates a different user experience. So it's less about, getting sort of force-fed an agent sort of, and getting that, lead from Zillow, which now you're going to have to try to convert, versus trying to create a really great consumer experience. And I think that's where, Redfin is a better site than Zillow and Realtor.com are, but we can take it even one step further, just because we're going to be able to learn from what we know, but also learn from what we've observed in the marketplace.
It's that innovation and forward thinking that gets me so excited about being a part of this company, because we just never know what's next, right? And there's some excitement around that. But I know that that's going to be a game changer for what we're doing. But if we're being completely fair, Virbela is the platform that's given us a unique advantage for a number of years, even before the pandemic. So now we're starting to see other industries. I mean, Renee and I were a part of a conference yesterday that had nothing to do with eXp, but they were on our platform. I mean, that's amazing. How has this platform changed our industry, and how are you seeing the industry respond to us?
Yeah, we're talking to, all kinds of folks. We're talking to associations of realtors that want to use the platform. We're talking to, I think that was the Woman Up conference that you were part of yesterday. And so in the real estate space, we've talked to, again, associations, national associations, and I'm not mentioning by name because, we're not really at that stage where, either they want to announce or we want to announce that we're doing something together. But the fact is that we have the only true platform that creates a sense of place that currently exists in any industry, not just real estate. So for businesses, for events, we're partnered with the largest, one of the largest events companies in the U.S., a company called Event Farm that was working for Nike and Apple and a bunch of other companies doing real life event, providing support services for them. And now they're doing events with the NBA and with and there's again a number of companies I can't mention because they're under NDA. But we're talking about the biggest tech companies, multi-billion-dollar tech companies that's using the Virbela platform to run their events, to actually organize their staff and their people. We've got one company, I think it's $40 billion market cap company, not in technology directly, but they're moving 15,000 of their staff full-time into a private campus to actually run their business virtually. And they have distributed workforce in the field actually doing physical labor, but the 15,000 of them are going to be working every day in Virbela just like we do. So it really creates this sense of going to the office, having water cooler conversations, being able to quickly pull people in and out of conversations. And the best part of it is, given that there are other technologies out there, you aren't going through Zoom fatigue. So I'm like staring at the camera here, which means that I sort of see you down here, like talking, but I don't actually see you because I want to ultimately give the best presentation to the people who are watching in the audience. But in Virbela, when you use the avatars, all of a sudden I'm much more relaxed. I'm able to really sort of pay attention and work on the different things, take real notes, and actually be more present for the person that I'm talking with in Virbela than I can via Zoom or Google Hangouts or what have you. So it's a totally different platform. Some great stats that came out. HTC did a big study, and they found that socially present, immersive experiences were actually better at staying in flow state, meaning staying in the flow of actually getting things done, and was almost as meaningful on an emotional level as being in person with somebody. So it wasn't quite there, but it was the best analog for in physical reality, but it actually trumped physical engagement from being able to stay in flow and being able to keep working and make things happen. So you get this huge bump in productivity. It's something like 30 to 40% over being working with somebody directly, but still getting a lot of the emotional connection piece. So we've got lots of staff now that we've never met in person, but because we're always working together every day in a virtual campus setting, running around, pulling people into meetings, drafting stuff, asking people's opinions, it's quite incredible.
One of my favorite things about Virbela and eXp World is the spontaneous water cooler chat. That is not, that I've seen anywhere, replicated in any other remote work opportunity. And I've found it to be so incredibly interesting to see the evolution of mindset over the last 6 months, that not only in the real estate industry, but across global industries. I think there's an awakening to organizations realizing whether they decide to send their entire workforce home or do a hybrid model, having a remote accessible tool in your tool chest is absolutely necessary. It has to be there. And so to consider a platform like Virbela and to be able to emulate the closest possible environment to being next to each other, minus the hugs. We can still do high fives though.
Right.
It's such an amazing platform to keep a sense of community. And that has been a driver for us, here in Orlando with our real estate team, that we've been able to stay connected without missing a beat. We didn't wake up in March and say, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? How do we train our agents? How do we internally operate our business? That never once crossed our mind. It still hasn't, because it's the same thing we've been doing for 3 years.
It is, yeah. And obviously there's other companies that are trying to go virtual or being forced to go virtual, and they're primarily, they're going Zoom is their platform of choice. And the reality is that nobody's really been able to scale a company using Zoom or Skype. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't some companies that aren't able to operate in a more virtual way. And some companies have been around for a while, like WordPress is fully virtual company, and some other companies have certainly done it. But Virbela provides this level of true engagement that it's just a totally different animal. And so companies trying to scale and virtually without a platform like Virbela, and Virbela is kind of a standalone entity right at the moment, meaning there's not really a good analog outside of Virbela. They're just going to have a hard time sort of doing what we've done and continue to do, which is why we bought the company back in 2018. We knew how powerful this platform was for us. We didn't want anybody trying to grab the platform out from under us and potentially doing something nefarious with it. And as you know, there was a little bit of a kerfuffle in January of 2019 that one of our competitors actually tried to do that, and they literally tried to make that happen. And fortunately, Alex turned that down and said, no, we're not selling to you, because we're actually, we're going to work with the company that has actually been a customer of ours. And so we were able to, fortunately, had a great relationship with Alex, that we were able to sort of thwart that attempt. Much to the chagrin of the other player out there. So, and now it's been, full circle. We are now totally empowered to continue to scale and grow.
You're such a visionary, and you've done things well ahead of the times. I mean, did you envision this? I know you had a big idea, but did you ever envision, obviously not a pandemic, but what about the growth and the success of Virbela and that platform and Alex, and now across so many industries? I mean, you've changed the way business is done in so many different ways. Did you ever think of anything that big?
Well, we hoped, I think would probably be the more accurate term. We knew what it did for eXp. We knew that without Virbela, there's no way to have scaled the organization at the rate that we scaled. Never would have happened just because you think about the folks that are stuck with Zoom as being their platform for engagement. It's really tends to be more of one-way communication. It's not really, you can't have a whole bunch of people really truly collaborating and bouncing off into different work groups and coming back and sort of being sort of that sort of dynamic thing that you get in a physical office and via Virbela. And I also consider Zoom to be very transactional and a relatively high friction. You have to set an appointment. You have to put it on the calendar. It has to be worthwhile to actually put it on the calendar without wasting somebody's time. And so there's all of these sort of checklist items that have to sort of be in the mix. Whereas with Virbela, it's just on. You jump in, you want to have a conversation with somebody, you just want to ask them something. who, I don't want to say who answers the phone because we're realtors, but who wants to answer their phones these days, right? Yeah. So it's like the phone. I call the phone app on my phone the most intrusive app on my iPhone. It's like the one app that I actually wish I could get rid of on my iPhone.
Didn't you at one point though? I thought when we implemented Workplace by Facebook, because I took that nod from you. I remember at one point you said, "I'm taking the phone app, I'm moving it over." And when you are a part of our organization, you reach out to me via Workplace because it's a phone.
Oh yeah. Well, like even today, if I show you my screen, like on my speed bar, you don't see my phone app, like the speed bar down here. So it's actually up here. So if I'm scrolled over here and somebody, I want to make a phone call, I have to actually scroll back. It's like I just don't use the phone. Now Workplace by Facebook, I've got that there. I got the old Voxer app, which you guys can remember when we were really using Voxer heavily. And then I've got some of my Gmail and other stuff in the other speed bar folder. But the phone is not my favorite app.
We know how we know how to reach you when we need to reach you, and it's definitely not by calling. So, I want to switch gears for a minute. Let's talk about some of the other virtual models. There are some different real models out there. Some that are now offering revenue share, some that are offering equity, some that are offering other things. What do you think are the questions an agent really needs to ask and really understand when evaluating the different models that are currently in the virtual space?
Yeah. So, well, first and foremost, it's really cool that, we led the way on two fronts, revenue share and equity. And now we've got a couple other companies that now offer equity in some form to their agents. And so that's pretty cool to sort of know that, it's if you can't beat them, sort of copy them. That's kind of what we're seeing is that we're seeing, we're not able to grow their brokerage, by just doing this or just doing that. So we're going to copy and copy and copy. In fact, one company, they've got 5-level rev share program. They got like 4 ways to earn equity. And then they're like, quote unquote, charging less fees and this and that. And it's kind of funny to see, quite frankly, because they're not innovating at all. They're just copying. And so the challenge I see is that they're unless they're truly coming from an innovator's persona, they're always going to be trying to catch up because we just bought Showcase. We bought Verbella 2 years ago. We got some other things I can't talk about yet that are in the works that again are game changers yet again. But first and foremost, I want to just hats off to the fact that we got other companies now offering equity. So that's a big deal. So agents are being honored for the work that they're doing. Something I, as an agent, I was obviously active, productive agent at a very high level, running teams. I knew all the pain points that agents went through, and you got other folks that literally don't even come from residential real estate, trying to build a model for residential real estate agents, and then then they figure out that, okay, well, what we're doing isn't working, so let's just copy eXp at some level and just make it cheaper. And so that's kind of what we're kind of seeing at the moment. One of the challenges, and of course, we're talking about one particular company in that particular case. It's a total turnaround too. If you look at their revenues from Q1, you look at their revenues from Q2, the company's been like in a tailspin trying to figure out what to do to actually turn themselves around. And it's tough to turn yourself around. Once you start to actually shrink, you look at almost any company, when they're growing, you want to keep your foot on the gas, because once you stop growing, it starts to go downhill fairly fast. And it's sometimes hard to stop that, especially when somebody's got a first mover's advantage like eXp, who hasn't stopped growing. So, so the other piece is look at the financials. We now have five public companies in the real estate space. Read the financials of Remax, read the financials of Realty, read the financials of eXp, read the financials of Redfin. Actually, there's 6 companies. Read the financials of Fathom. Fathom, they just did the deal where they're distributing equity to their agents. Of course, they're more of a transaction-based model versus the combination of rev share. And then you got this got company Real out there. Read all the financials. Look at the numbers and make if you're evaluating, look at the numbers, see who's going to, actually got a model that scales, is profitable, and is growing. And it becomes, in my opinion, pretty clear, and that right now, and won't always be the case. I mean, I'm kind of like Jeff Bezos, in that Jeff Bezos says somebody's going to eat his lunch at some point. I fully own the fact that if we aren't vigilant and if we aren't continuing to iterate and continue to make the best model, somebody will eat our lunch, and they deserve to eat our lunch. So I'm not going to complain about somebody eating our lunch if we aren't innovating and doing things cool and interesting. But that's our job, is to always continue to innovate, iterate, do things cool and interesting, and make sure that the agent is always first and foremost, who we're building this company for. It's not for, obviously we're all shareholders, so we do want to be profitable because we want to be around long term as well. But the key is how do we continue to put agents first? How do we continue to iterate? How do we come up with new products and services? Express Offers, huge platform. I can't say enough about what's coming down the pipe with Express Offers. Darren James is now leading up really kind of affiliate services, and that guy, super uber producer, super great guy. If you guys haven't had him on, Leadership from the Heart yet, get Darren on. That
He
guy
is a great person. We'll definitely get him on.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. So anyway, I could go on, but the reality is that it's interesting to just see that there's other players out there, and it keeps us on our toes. We haven't had anybody that's had a value proposition that's even close to eXp since we started, and now we got a couple of companies copying us. So maybe we'll have to step up our game.
Well, it's got to be flattering, right? I mean, it's like great. And, we talk about, I love what you said about if you're not innovating, you're not really going anywhere, right? And people are just copying. And, I talk about in my business and just in life in general, comparison kills joy. And I love that we just have you've got the eye on the ball. I mean, you are leading us as our founder, but also our leadership team, and really focused on the agent. When you say that, it is so true. We're so agent centric. So we're not looking around figuring out what everybody else is doing. What you're doing is focusing on what you have built and how you can make it better, so that all of us succeed at a high level, and those that join us and are a part of us that aren't with us yet are going to succeed at a high level. So I love that about our company, and thank you for that leadership.
Yeah, what's the phrase? It's winners focus on winning, and others focus on winners.
Right.
So,
right.
And competition is a good thing.
Right.
I mean, for Pete's sake, we're realtors. We are driven by competition. And then also, let's keep a reminder for us all, and so happy to hear our leadership does this, is you can't rest on your laurels. None of us, not at the agent level, not at the higher level of management and leadership in our company, is we're not resting on our laurels. It's fine to have competition, though. That's a healthy thing.
Right. Well, and look at the people we've brought on lately. I mean, I think you guys had Michael Valdez on here. I think like that.
Yes,
that guy's a freaking rock star. Courtney Chekaran, chief marketing officer. We've got a couple more announcements coming up. We got obviously Dave and Stacy and Jason and Jeff. I mean, and you've got like this, and then you got this Curtis Dixon. If you haven't had Curtis Dixon on, get Curtis Dixon on your show. That guy is just a freaking rock star. I mean, we got so many rock stars in leadership that bleed. How do we help agents succeed at the highest level? So many of them have been active agents. Talked about Darren James. I mean, that guy still is probably is the number one agent or number one team in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and he's now in a leadership capacity inside of eXp. These are the types of people that are sort of leading the charge. I mean, produce high level and then also want to add value to agents' lives.
So we're talking about the eXp Realty side of business for a minute, and it's so critical. I have to ask this question. So I'm a real estate agent, I'm a team leader, I'm a broker owner, and I'm standing on the edge considering joining eXp Realty. Should I join eXp Realty? What do you think is important for those on the edge considering eXp Realty? What should they know right now why it's important to make the move today?
Yeah, I think the reality is you always have to look at what's your 5 to 10 year plan, and think about the ideas. What you're going to do today, does it support where you're going to in that 5 to 10, 15, 20 years, whatever that is. And if you're on, if you're climbing the wrong ladder and it's leaning against the wrong house, you're going to have to come back down the ladder, and you're going to have to put it back on the right house in the future. Why not climb the ladder you're eventually going to climb anyway? So you're going to have to go through the exercise of learning systems and processes, engagement, and of course, all companies are going to become virtual companies over time. Just what's going on with pandemic is just speeding that up. But we're leading the charge on how to engage, collaborate, work with clients, mentor, train, support, all of that stuff in a way that is totally different than the norm. And yet everybody knows this is where everything's going. Like I talk to an agent, doesn't matter who they're with, they go, we know that's the way we're going, but I'm going to stay here. How does that work? Why would you do that? Like this is where it's all going. Why would you stay at XYZ firm? And they obviously are making a value-based judgment that's good for them, hopefully. But in my mind, if they already know this is where it's going to go, why not look, see, move? It's like, look where things are going, take an assessment, and then make your move to wherever it is that you're going to be long term, and build your career there, rather than trying to hopscotch your way to where you're eventually going to go.
Well, you bring up, you're talking about a really important point that needs to be repeated and put pressure on this conversation, is that scalability, right? And so even if you look at the way an individual agent can scale their business with such ease here in this model, or team leaders or broker owners considering transitioning their brokerage to eXp Realty, I just think it's so important to point out, when you started eXp Realty, Glenn, you realized very quickly how you could scale a brokerage in a different way. Fast forward to 2020, we're dealing with a pandemic. Look at the international global expansion that eXp Realty was able to accomplish utilizing the tools that we have, which almost felt like overnight. I mean, we just announced additional countries coming on board before the end of 2020. Can you talk about that? That's insane. It's awesome.
I'm going, Michael might not be happy about me doing this, but I'm going to pull a little graphic out and show you this little graphic. Let's see, I think this is it. And I'm going to post it here if I can download it. Am I able to upload or share something here?
You should have a share screen. Do you have a share screen in the bottom?
Okay, yeah. Let me see if I do. And
if not, you should be able to post in the chat box.
Okay, let me see if I can share screen. So let me share the screen.
And we had Michael on, and we are he's so excited about the opportunities. And for somebody with his resume and his background he was at Realogy 15 years and did some amazing things. And he was giddy when we talked to him about everything that's going on with our company. So it's kind of fun to see that.
So you see,
he's a powerhouse of energy, by the way.
So you see that little that little graphic there? That's
yes.
That's the International Auditorium. So anyway, it's kind of a fun little graphic. So he's working on getting more of the international stuff going, and those are all the flags that are represented by the countries we're in and the countries we're growing to this year.
That's amazing.
When you look at that, how does that make you feel, Glenn?
Well, I pinch myself, surreal. I mean, those are two pretty good terms. I've had to pinch myself, and it's been surreal for a lot of years. But every time, like, and Elizabeth, you've been around, as long as anybody. We went through all of those different eXp cons and all those different things that we did, and every time we did one, we're going, there's no way we're going to be able to top this. Like, it just was so good, right? And then somehow we figure out a way to top it, and then we figure out a way to top it again. And so to some extent, it's like this continual, it's like Groundhog Day of pinching myself. I can keep on pinching myself about this new thing that we just did, and it's super exciting. Super stoked is a term that I use quite often, and it's really easy to be super stoked at eXp.
We're all growing something and building something together, and it's pretty amazing when we talk about our leadership and how focused you are on the agents. We really are one. As cliche as it sounds, we're really one family. I mean, your leadership's always coming to the agents saying, what can we do better? What can we do different? What can we do to build you all up? And to really be a part of something from the ground floor. I mean, we're still young, I mean, look at what we're doing on the international side. I cannot wait. I mean, to go into 5 countries by the end of this year, I mean, it's September, is unheard of for really anybody. And so to see what we do by the end of 2020, I can't wait to see what we do by the end of 2021 as far as our growth. And again, we're all owners, and so we're doing this together. It's a pretty amazing, yes, pinch yourself.
Yeah. So that's why I've got pretty much a smile plastered my face all the time. It's pretty easy to be super stoked and excited at eXp.
I think a lot of us have that smile plastered, and certainly over the last few months, while we're faced with so many heavily weighted outside circumstances, it's been Elizabeth and I have mentioned it many times. It's a blessing, quite frankly, to be a part of this. And by the way, Elizabeth, because you have been with the company forever, kudos to you. Just so you guys know, Jeff and I just celebrated our 3-year anniversary a couple days ago.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes, thank you very much.
Funny, people say, oh my gosh, you've been here forever. Actually, I mean, I haven't. Obviously, Glenn trumps that, but 5.5 years. But it seems, I was telling somebody the other day, I said, I can't believe it's been 5.5 years. I wake up every single day excited about my company, excited to collaborate with the people within our company, to jump in the world, to talk to other people, right? I mean, it's just, I don't know many, it's not a job to me. When it's not a job or something you feel like you have to do, it's hard to take that smile off your face. So I'm blessed every single day. So
yeah, there's Marguerite, 4 years in October.
Oh,
hey, Marguerite.
Awesome. See, it's and she was one person because of this company. I remember she was on stage at one of our Icon events, or I'm sorry, not Icon, eXp Con or shareholders event. And I remember her speaking, and I stalked her. I found her afterwards. I was like, you don't know me, but you speak my language. Like, I love everything about you. I'm sure she thought I was nuts. But because of this company, like Marguerite and Renee and all these, I have all these people in my world and in my tribe. And it's pretty amazing to be a part of. So let's talk about your crystal ball. I mean, because your crystal ball is always pretty interesting because you see things that like none of us saw coming. What's your crystal ball look like for the next 3, maybe 5 years for eXp?
Yeah. So, I think obviously we're going to grow a lot. You start just taking our current growth trajectory and you sort of just translate it into, 3-5 years. And, it easily gets us well over that 100,000 agent mark. Not that that's an important number, but it is an important number because there's only 5 companies that have ever grown a brand over 100,000 agents. You got Century 21, you got Coldwell Banker, you got Remax, you got Keller Williams, and actually I think we'll be the 5th. So that's kind of the very small number of companies that have actually hit that number of agents. And it's as long as we continue to iterate around agents, and it's all about iterating around the agent value proposition and continuing to work on that. It's really one of those things. I use the term, it's a fait accompli. It's just something that will happen just because we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. A lot of people, unfortunately, focus on the wrong metrics. And so one of the metrics that we're super focused on is Net Promoter Score. So we're doing we're doing NPS on a scale of 0 to 10. How likely is it that you refer a friend or colleague to join eXp Realty? And we're measuring that, but we're also taking all of those comments that are provided to us from our agents and saying, how do we how do we take this to make eXp better? What is it that's currently a pain point for agents, and how do we add resources and talent and find the best people to work on that? And so if we're seeing a theme, that's what we're working on. And so it really helps us really stay focused on the agent. And then we're doing things like, focus on onboarding, on transactions, on all the different other components of the business. And some of them still need a bit of improvement. But like when Dave Knorr joined us a couple of years ago, or maybe it was only, I think not less than 2 years ago, I think onboarding was like a -2 in terms of NPS. It was taking like 2 weeks or better for some people to get onboarded. With under Dave's leadership, and now Curtis Dixon's taken that over. That's almost to a 70. So I think it's 67. I think was our last look. That's starting to get into that, where agents are actually having a good experience throughout the whole onboarding journey. We still have a lot of things that we need to do, and it's still coming out in the data. So we had meetings yesterday just talking about iterating. So as long as we do that, we'll get to 100,000, probably 200,000. Eventually, we'll be 300, 400, 500,000 around the world. I know Brent Gove likes to say 1 million agents, but we're going to get to whatever number we're going to get to over time, as long as we focus on agents and iterating around the agents. The other piece is, technology is changing. We are getting to a point where we're reaching, as Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil talk about, we're getting to this sort of singularity where how does the enterprise iterate around technology? Where does AI start to play a role, whether it be contract review? I sort of think about the managing broker's job should get easier in the next 3 to 4 years, such that literally they're only working on the contracts that have issues or have problems, and they're not having to read a whole bunch of contracts that are great. I mean, obviously, I'm going to make an assumption here that Renee, when you write a contract, and Elizabeth, when you write a contract, you write really good contracts. But that doesn't mean the broker doesn't have to look at every single contract and every single page. And a lot of that, with AI and technology, is going to just streamline all that stuff. And so the managing broker's job is going to become much more about problem solving, real issues to help contracts actually get to close, rather than just working in that compliance, did I review the contract? So I think AI is going to be kind of a big deal, and I think it's really going to be on the back office, the brokerage, where it's going to make the biggest impact, because it's going to allow a brokerage like eXp to scale even faster and do things more accurate and make that whole compliance piece. The other piece, I think, is that you're going to see a number of industries that obviously are going to pivot and change to what we're doing. We think that there's a lot of complementary industries to real estate. So you can think about things that are right in our vertical: mortgage, title and escrow, home warranty. Those are pretty obvious. But there's insurance, there's financial planning, there's wealth management. All this stuff sort of is tangential to home ownership. Homeowners tend to need a lot of these other services, and those same services would work out really well in a virtualized environment, because it's very much of a consultative type business. Some of it can be done remote, some of it can be done in person, but more of it's going to be done remote just because of what's going on presently. And a company and a technology stack like eXp's put together would be perfect. And so we're always looking for, where can we find the right leadership, and or where can we find a small company, like a Verbella, like a Showcase IDX, that's in one of these verticals that has leadership in place. And now they could, by combining with eXp, they could be on sort of rocket fuel to get to scale. So those are things that I think about, and where it's all going. Interest rates, I think, are going to stay really low. I don't think interest rates are going up anytime soon. So that should continue to make home ownership easier, because most buyers are payment buyers, which I think bodes well for those who own real estate, because I think that sort of plays into higher real estate prices. Interest rates go up, different game. Not really excited about the fact that we have $41 trillion in U.S. debt. I think that's something that will have to get reworked out of the system. And again, eXp should be able to weather any storm that comes our way. So if there is a sort of any sort of recession that takes place because of just the debt that we have as a country, eXp is going to be able to weather that. Our bricks and mortar counterparts, competitors, that will probably be the end of bricks and mortar as we know it in that next downturn. We almost saw it with COVID, but fortunately it didn't happen. But the next downturn will probably be the nail in the coffin for most of these bricks and mortar competitors.
I was at a conference recently, Glenn, and there was a person from leadership from a competing company, and the conversation being held at this conference was around, it was a virtual conference. It was around the scaling down and the reduction in size of the business and the potential that they would scale back on their brick and mortar as a result of the pandemic. That sounds like a pretty natural conversation. But what I found quite interesting is in that conversation, this particular leader from one of our competing companies mentioned that one of the things they would focus on with that then freed up revenue was more happy hours and more team building activities. And while I think that's amazing, right? We all need our team building activities. I have to say, I'm a big fan of revenue share, and I'm a big fan of the fact that the overhead that you eliminated as a result of not needing brick and mortar gives us an opportunity as agents to receive another stream of income by way of the revenue share that the company is so generous to share with us. So I found that to be really interesting, and I just want to say thank you, because that, along with the multiple streams of income and the way we've diversified our business, is changing the lives of agents. And to say that we're grateful, grateful doesn't cover it. It's changing the lives of the agents.
Yeah, well, it is, and I look at the world a little bit different than obviously this other leader that you're referring to, and I don't know who that is, but I do see that as being a kind of a way for them to say, hey, we're going to get rid of our bricks and mortar, but we're going to keep the money. That's kind of code for that. And I think agents are smart enough to know that, the fact that my, broker owner just threw me a happy hour doesn't put more money in my pocket and doesn't help me put my kids through college. It doesn't help me make a car payment. What it means is that they've just bought me off for another 2 weeks to 2 months to not leave, as opposed to actually building a value proposition that they would never leave. So that's, so anyway, that's my take on happier. And I've seen some of these broker owners, and I think, Brad did a bunch of interviews, Brad Inman, with a bunch of leaders. And one of the comments that I thought was really interesting is there was actually more than one leader in the broker owner space that said, no, we're going to keep our bricks and mortar. Like we think it's important. And I'm you're living in the past. Like that's the reason why physical offices existed was because the one, there was no MLS. So that was number one. So you had to go to the office to actually find the listings. And then when there was an MLS, nobody had high-speed internet. So you had to go to the office to get a printout of the listings so you could drive by the properties. Now what's the value in office? The consumer's not coming to the office. The value of an office is so the broker owner can look his agents or her agents in the eye, and somehow that adds value to the agent. Well, maybe 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. I think 10 years ago it was a question that was even a value. But now, if you're still living with that paradigm that you need a physical office so you can be physically with the agents or you can be physically with the broker, you're going the way of the dodo bird.
Well, and to be fair, I mean, nobody really knows what they don't know until they experience it, right? I mean, I have more broker support and access to brokers around the state than I ever did in a bricks and mortar, right? I was reliant on one or two people, and hopefully they'd be in the office, or you hope that they'd answer your call or return your email. But I mean, I was a top producing agent, and it was impossible to get a hold of a broker. And when I needed a broker, right? I mean, so it's one of those where I have more access now, and I talk to people all the time that are thinking about joining the company. I'm really good at talking to people on behalf of others, and I'm just more of a, hey, people are going to watch us and see us grow in our company and want to be a part of that. But those that are really focused on, I get loyalty. I am loyal to a fault, right? And I have so many people talk about, well, I'm really loyal to my broker, and I'm like, That's great, but are you more loyal to your broker or more loyal to your family? And when I realized that, I was like, wow, that was a real eye-opener for me, because you're either building up somebody else's legacy or your own. And I love these people, but I love my family more. And coming into this virtual model and being able to build whatever I wanted that made sense for me and my family is freeing, right? And you're talking about changing agents' lives. You know, people talk about, oh, well, I was able to buy a car, or, you know, car payment or things like that. No. I was on a call earlier this morning with a number of our agents. One agent just paid off her mortgage, right? One agent just bought a new investment property, which that's life-changing. One agent out of Dallas talked about, just because of the stock that he's been awarded for doing the business he's doing anyway, he just paid for 8 years of college for his kids, and he has a freshman right now. His first one's a freshman. That's life-changing. And I don't think people recognize that, because that's not what we've done as an industry. And it seems too good to be true. And sometimes if it seems too good to be true, it usually is. In our case, it's reality.
Well, I remember, I think it was Rob Hahn, if I'm not mistaken, you know, when the prices hit, he did a little bit of an analysis on agents and broker owners, because we didn't know how bad COVID was going to be. And I'm pretty sure it was him, but it may not have been him. But the average agent has less than 90 days in reserves. So if something happened to the economy, they have less than 90 days. And so, you know, and that doesn't take into account that 90 days could start today. They get hit by a bus. You know, something happens physically where they can't work for the next, you know, 3 months. Brian Colhane, great example. You know, back in 2013 or 14, he broke his hip. He couldn't physically show property for over 6 months. But because of the revenue share that eXp provided to him, he didn't have to declare bankruptcy. And now, you know, his business has continued to grow in you know, substantially. I mean, he's one of our, you know, quote unquote eXp millionaires, and probably multi at that. So we've got different folks in the organization that, you know, have continued to grow and have those reserves, have that cash flow, have that equity, because you never know when something bad's going to happen. And, you know, and it does happen. You know, a percentage of the population is going to have something happen to them. If they can't take care of the family, you know, they're going to have to sell their assets. They're going to have to, you know, downsize considerably. And certainly don't want to think about, you know, what's more challenging than that. But, you know, it could get even more challenging than that for some people.
We have one last question, Elizabeth. I don't know. Are you ready for this one? I think Glenn can handle this question, don't you?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, Glenn, you were, you know, for those that don't know you, I mean, they really don't understand what an authentic, generous giver that you are. I mean, you are a visionary. You're very humble. I tell people this all the time, and it's just a blessing to be in your organization and in your world, right? Virtually and not. But so we really, you know, Renee and I talked at the very beginning. You were the first person that we reached out to when we were looking to leadership and really understanding what we could be doing as leaders, or how we could build ourselves as leaders. And so because of you, really, in our conversation, that's what launched Leadership from the Heart. So we would love to know, what does leadership from the heart mean to Glenn Sanford?
It really means removing the ego side of what's going on. You know, I think there's, everybody struggles with it. You know, I probably struggle with it now more than I used to. Well, maybe less in some respects. So it's a mix. But ego stops you from doing the right things for the right reasons. You know, a lot of people, you know, if they do the right thing, they're doing it for the wrong reasons, or they do the wrong things for the wrong reasons. But you know, I think leadership of the heart is doing the right things for the right reasons. And it comes back, you know, that my favorite phrase is that Zig Ziglar phrase, which is, you can get anything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want. And I think that means that means taking a back seat. You know, if you look at my early years of eXp, like 2009, 2010, 2011, you know, those were very lean years. I said jokingly, but seriously at the same time, that if I really wanted to have made money, I should have stayed an agent. You know, because and I said that about being, you know, running a team. I said, you know, if I really wanted to make money, I should have went down the path of running a team, because for the first while, it's a lot of headaches. It's definitely delayed gratification, and it might not work. You might not be able to pull it off. And so the idea, you know, if you want to make sure that you're making money, you stay an agent. And so even starting, I mean, I would have made more money as an agent for the first 2, 3, potentially 4 years, maybe 5 years even, than I did, you know, inside of eXp, running eXp. But the vision, it's the one marshmallow, two marshmallows. It's like you do the right things for the right reasons for long enough, and pretty soon, you know, the rewards come back. But it takes a long time to get there. And you got to let the ego, you know, it may be that you're not driving as fancy a car as you'd like, or that you won't have, you know, some of the trappings success in the short run, but you're doing things for other people to make sure that they've got a better life than they would have otherwise. And eventually the payback comes back, and it comes back way bigger than, you know, the initial expense, especially if you can, you know, sort of weather that storm. Not everybody can do it, but that's, I think, what leadership from the heart really means. It means, you know, doing something with the belief that eventually, you know, there is some intrinsic reward for doing it that you may not actually get to partake of, because you're the one sort of behind the scenes doing it, making it better for your family, making it better for others. And eventually, if things go well, you might get a little taste of it. And knock on wood, I'm starting to be able to actually see the rewards from that, but we didn't know.
But you believed. But you believed.
Yeah, but I believed.
And you knew you stayed focused, and we feel that. We feel everything you just explained. I was getting goosebumps because you didn't know we were going to ask that question. You just literally outlined what we feel cascading throughout our brokerage. We feel that, just so you know.
Oh, awesome. Great to hear.
We so appreciate you, Glenn, for everything. And, you know, we still have big plans to continue leadership from the heart. We have so many people, and now even some people that you've mentioned we're going to bring on. But down the road, I know there's some exciting things for eXp. And so 6 months, a year, whenever, we'd love to have you back. But we thank you for your leadership and for always sharing and being so generous with all of us.
Awesome. Good stuff. Thanks, Renee. Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks for having me on your show.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Glenn.
See you in the world.
See you.
Bye, everyone.